Welcome to the program. I'm Mark Imperial. This segment's being brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done and published to educate consumers, grow their businesses, and leave a legacy. This is a series of spotlights on remarkable business intermediaries from across the country. And joining me on this segment is Michael Shea. He's with the Transworld office of Tampa. Michael, welcome to the program.
Thanks, Mark. Thank you for having me.
Michael, tell us a little bit about your work and specifically who are those types of clients that you serve?
I've been in practice now for this is my 17th year. I came from a little bit different background, not a traditional business guy. I was an Army officer for about 10 years and then transitioned to corporate America and then moved into business brokerage literally 17 years ago on a reload. Just did not want to reload again and, went down this path. And it's been a great journey since. So my kind of claim to fame here in the Florida market is I'm a Main Street guy. I love taking care of Main Street. I will do larger deals. I'm a little bit of an anomaly. I think it's my military background. I'd like to do a lot of transactions. So I average anywhere between 25 to 35 transactions a year at the Main Street level. Top of the tier is usually around $2-3 million in gross revenue, but a whole lot of little stuff, 300, 400, 500, that type of stuff.
Well, thank you for your service, sir. And I'd like to hear about these Main Street businesses. They've been in business for a while. Are they knowledgeable about how to sell a business? What kind of happens when they first reach out to you and you have your first conversations? What does that sound like?
A lot of it now with the internet has foregone the former method of calling up their CPA and asking for evaluation. The blessing of the internet is now you could hop on Google and type, and there's going to be a plethora of information. The question is, what's the truth? People get sorted into buckets. They tend to lean towards the happiest, rainbow and sunshine outlook. Rarely do they know the realities of prepping the business for sale in terms of making sure their books and records are clean, addressing fundamental, issues in the business like customer concentration and the like. So they tend to come with some understanding of it, but they get lost in the mathematics. Shark Tank has been a blessing and a curse at the same time because it's planted some misnomers in people's heads.
Let's talk about that a little bit because, as you said, a blessing and a curse, just as the internet is. There's a lot of information out there and a lot of misinformation and a lot of depends kind of information. So, what are some of the biggest myths or misconceptions that you keep hearing over and over again?
Well, I think they get twisted on multiples. Industry standards, particularly in trades, you'll hear where traditionally people traded businesses. So Florida A is the highest volume marketplace for business transactions in the country because everybody wants to be here. And we're unique in that we have a multiple listing service here where other markets don't have that for business brokerage. But the trades, people like pool service guys and lawn service guys and cleaning companies have always had these rules of thumb that have planted in their head. And, right, wrong, or indifferent, it's usually that, hey, it depends and you haven't asked the second question. They think those multiples lock and aren't a function of scale. So, we have to do a little bit of education and walk them through it in layman's terms. And these are operators. They don't want to hear fancy finance talk. They want to know, make me understand it and give me the reason why in a way that makes me feel good that I'm doing, I'm making the right decision about my price point when I go to market. So that's usually the disconnect is they hear a multiple or they've discussed something with a friend about a ratio on revenue and confuse that with cash flow and EBITDA. And then God help us, Mark Cuban throws out a multiple on TV and we got issues. But not hard to overcome. In Florida, we have that MLS, which allows us to show comps. So that allows us to get past that hurdle really fast.
So if you're a Main Street business, before you get behind the eight ball and you get the idea that you want to sell, what can you tell Main Street business owners? How far ahead should they start planning and preparing to sell a business?
So you'll hear people say 3 years. The longer I've been in this business, the more I tell people 5. I encourage people to pick up the phone right around this time of year before you file that tax return and just have a discussion on valuation, go through the numbers really, really quick, and then say, hey, this is what your business looks like in terms of value today versus what it would be if you did X, Y, and Z. So for example, I had a couple in my office just 2 days ago. Uh, they had a small pool company. They clean pools, and he'd been doing it for 17 years. And did his own tax return. So strike one. Strike two was the tax return did not look at all like his QuickBooks. And needless to say, I think the wife was slapping him on the back of the head as they went out the door because they made some decisions short term that could have been fixed really really quickly if they talked to me 3 5 years prior. Because I could have just said, hey, here's a legitimate way to run this. Here's some ways to soften the tax burden this way, get the right CPA in place. That $500 you spend on your tax accountant would have made you, infinitely more money and a whole lot more sellable of a business when you come in here when you want to retire.
So, speaking of that type of a mistake, the statistic is huge where 80% of the businesses that try to sell don't sell. And I believe it's because a lot of folks don't recognize the value of the service of a business intermediary and they try to sell it themselves. They think it's as easy as selling a home. Are the taxes sort of like the biggest mistake people make that make their businesses unsellable or sabotage their success, or what are some others?
Well, the taxes, when there's inventory involved, they do some things, FIFO, LIFO, again, here comes these fancy accounting terms that they as operators know how to use. But they forget how the buyer looks at it. So when you're selling, just much like when you're selling a house, you want to stage it, right? You don't want to sell a pink house. You want to sell a house that's one of those neutral colors. Sellers need to recognize that the buyer of their business is not going to be them, and they need to understand what lens those people look at. The taxes are major because it gives this level of confidence. Now, when you get into M&A transactions and far more sophisticated buyers, they tend to lean towards the P&Ls because they understand how the taxes are managed, the difference between accrual and cash, and all the gobbledygook that goes into it. But at Main Street, they don't understand that. And they got to remember that first-time buyer who's buying that pizza parlor or that retail shop, their accountant's whispering in their ear saying, hey, get the tax return. And that's where we tend to lose things because the damage has been done. And yes, we routinely hear, hey, everybody does it, but that doesn't overcome the question of integrity and that fear factor that's applied. I think fear on the buy side is what really gets hurt when you got the taxes that don't reconcile back to the financial statement. I can spot it because I do this every day. You're not fooling me, but I'm not the one writing the check. So it doesn't matter what I say. It matters what the buyer says.
Sage advice. Michael, what inspired you to become a business intermediary? Take us back and tell us what got you started.
So I have a little ADD, I think. I had a very corporate career, a pretty high, intensity, operational focused guy. When we moved here, I was moving to Orlando from Texas. My realtor's husband was a business broker. And long and short of it was we were going to reload, and we had already done several reloads, and we had just had our first child, and it was not a viable. Now this was the happy year. This was 2005, and it was you could throw a bubble gum against a wall and sell something. So it was really great. Exchange rates were high. We had a lot of Europeans coming in. And I took the leap at that point saying, this is pretty cool. I can work for myself because I've been kind of burned out with that. Fortunate to hook up with Andy Cagnetta and Transworld. In their infancy, the Orlando office was like their first multi-office, foray. Now we got God knows how many around the world. And had some fun with it and success. And then, the recession hit. But it was more of I don't fit in the corporate world, but I fit in this middle universe, and my attention, those short engagements were fun for me. Not without angst, right? You're always worried about that next engagement, but I found myself to be in a place where I was pretty good at breaking down corporate finance down to operationally what people could understand in a friendly and understandable manner, so they were able to get their deal done. I'm pretty intense, so deals don't fall apart when I'm handling them.
I've had Andy Cagnetta on the program. He's a wealth of knowledge for sure.
Yeah.
Michael, before I ask you my last question, you mentioned 2005 where money was running uphill and it was just a great market, a great time to sell. How about now? If you're a business owner now on Main Street considering selling your business, and this is post-pandemic marketing marketplace, is this a good time to sell a business in this economy?
Yeah, so I'm going to speak to Florida. So I've read a ton of studies about some dynamics that are happening at a national level. Because I'm one of Andy's partners, we look at the data, and our results are through the roof. Now, I think that's partly because the smaller companies are a little tight on ad spend. Their reserves post COVID was difficult to navigate. So we've had exponential growth. We had our best year ever in 2021. First quarter this year, we are up over prior. Inventory here in Florida remains low. We used to carry about 4,000 listings in the MLS. It's less than two right now. And nobody has the magic 8 ball to decide what's causing that. We think it's, the level of uncertainty with Ukraine, inflationary impact, but it's somewhat masked here in Florida because we've got this massive influx of people coming here from overseas, B, the Northeast. COVID kind of pushed people into Florida. We're having a great year. We're selling businesses. Our inventory remains low. We are seeing signs on the demographic level that the baby boomer tsunami that everyone's been predicting for 15 years is finally starting to happen. So I believe it to be a good time. I do have my concerns about inflation. I think if you're going to do it, you probably need to do it, within the next 12 months, if it's on the horizon within the 24, because something's got to give on the inflation side. But Florida is a unique piece of the puzzle. We're impacted by the exchange rates from people from overseas. It seems, I was telling someone the other day, it seems when there's a problem in the world, families and people want to go someplace else, and they end up coming here. We've got a business-friendly environment. The weather, you can't beat it. And there's a real marketplace for businesses here that drive multiples up. So if you're a seller, that's a key element to the Florida marketplace, is those European buyers and those South American buyers and those folks from overseas, they tend to pay a little more. So when inventory is low, those multiples jump a little bit at the
Wow.
Main Street level.
Really great insight. I really appreciate that. Michael, for business owners listening right now that realize they need to really get their stuff in order and would love to speak with you, how can they find you, connect with you, and learn more?
Sure. I am on just about, I think I'm on every social media platform. You can go to my website, which is yourfloridabusinessbroker.com, or you can email me at mike@tworld.com. And my phone number is 321-287-0349.
Michael, this has been terrific. I really appreciate you stopping by and taking the time to share with my audience today. I wish you continued success for you and for all of your clients.
Thanks, Mark. Appreciate it.
That was Michael Shea. He's with Transworld in Tampa. And this segment's been brought to you by booksgrowbusiness.com. It's the place where busy professionals get their books done and published to educate consumers, grow their practices, and to leave a legacy. That's all for now. I'm Mark Imperial, and thanks for joining me.